I see the member for Taylor. Before I call the member for Taylor, I remind members that this is the member's first speech and the customary courtesies of the House ought be extended in these circumstances. Call the member for Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and congratulations on your election as Speaker of the House. I congratulate Her Excellency, the Honourable Frances Adamson AC, on her address to the House, and also acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the land of the Kaurna people, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And congratulations to all of the class of 22 on your excellent first speeches. I want to begin my first address to this House with the words that I quoted in concluding my first speech to the Federal House of Representatives. We come here to give service because we early caught the disease of endeavouring to render public services in some sphere and to leave the world better than we found it. These were the words of Sidney McHugh, a South Australian farmer, veteran and Labor Party member from Corn, who served as a federal member for Wakefield from 1938 to 1940. McHugh's words are old-fashioned, but I believe fundamentally the sentiment to be true, that what unites us in this place is a desire to do good. A century later, in the context of a profound cynicism about politics here and around the world, we have a job to prove that. And I have found that the best way to combat public distrust is faithful service to your constituents and to your cause. And fundamentally, that means showing up and doing what you'll say you'll do. That's why for the last 15 years I've regularly held publicly advertised stalls in Manapara Shopping Centre. I've door-knocked and called. I've attended events all over the northern suburbs and the mid-north. And I've delivered on our election commitments that we made on my election day in 2007, like a GP super clinic on Curtis Road. And I've faithfully tried to represent people when they've come to me with issues. Because I'm a person of strong opinions, I've also argued with my constituents when I think they're wrong. Now, when I quoted Sid McHugh in my first speech to the Federal Parliament, I didn't realise that I'd be following in his footsteps in another way. McHugh served not only as member for Wakefield, but also as a member for Light and the member for Burra in the South Australian Parliament. And it's my great honour that the people of Taylor have placed their confidence in me to serve them in this House. But I'm conscious, of course, that I would not have had the great privilege to serve in both the federal and state parliaments without the great Australian Labor Party. Ever since I joined the party in 1992 and went to my first meeting at the Elizabeth sub-branch, I've been committed to this great Australian cause of fairness, justice, liberty and the mutual bond of mateship with our fellow citizens. And I'd like to thank the Taylor sub-branch for all of their work in the election campaign, particularly our President, Mr Steve Hollingsworth, a former worker at Holden and a delegate for the mighty Vehicle Builders Union. And I'd also like to acknowledge Mr John Gee, my predecessor in Taylor, and a former Holden worker, delegate and official at the VBU. These men were on the front line to save Holdens from closure, and they're on the front line advocating for workers in the aftermath. I'd also like to thank the SDA for their passion in advancing the rights of retail workers. To Josh Peake, to Sonia and Tom at the SDA, keep up the good work. As a former trolley collector, I saw firsthand how contracting can lead to a race to the bottom on wages and conditions, and it radicalised me. To this day, I believe that the fair payment of workers is the foundation stone for a fair society. If you don't have fair wages, you won't have fairness in other areas of public policy, because greed will be prioritised as a societal value. And I'm so glad that after the long fight, not just by unions, but also by the Fair Work Inspectorate, most of the major retailers have now taken action to protect trolley collectors from subcontracting arrangements which undermine pay and conditions. And you should all note Mr Speaker, that the trolley collectors faction in this government is small, but it's significant. Just the Premier and I think we're open to new members, even those on the in the opposition. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr Ian Smith of the TWU, Mr Peter Lamps of the AWU and Mr John Adley of the CEPU for their advocacy on behalf of their members. Now, so many of the people I acknowledged in my first speech to the House of Representatives are now members of this House or the other place. I can't possibly acknowledge them all. You know who you are. Thanks for putting up with me. But I do want to place on record my admiration of the efforts of the ALP party office, our President Emily Burke, our campaign director Reggie Martin and our new secretary Mr Eamon Burke. A great election result, a great campaign. And a shout out to the members for Ramsay, who knew me in my high school days, Kapunda High, and the member for Elizabeth, who knew me at Salisbury Uni. Someone asked me about Salisbury Uni the other day, and I had to explain that the campus was closed all those years ago. And I'd also like to give a shout out to the members for Florey and West Torrens, who were at my first ever Young Labor meeting. And I thank them for their long and enduring friendships. I'd also like to thank my two former Wakefield campaign managers, the Treasurer on cue and the Premier, both tough taskmasters. I would not have predicted 14 years ago that I should be so fortunate to serve with both of them in government. And I'm so glad to serve as a minister in your government, Mr Premier. And the Premier must have taken some notes 14 years ago when he attended my first speech to the National Parliament, because I talked at length about urban renewal in the Playford Alive project. And the planning portfolio, I'm keenly aware of its critical significance and its decade-long influence on how citizens work, how they live in their homes and their families and their community. It is a vital long-term policy lever, and I look forward to implementing our election commitment to having a review into the planning legislation and the code. I also think my time on the Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade has uniquely positioned me for the trade and investment portfolio at a time of unprecedented international turmoil. Of course, no MP or minister is any good without a vast network of talented current and former staff. And for my current staff, thanks for the last 50 plus days, thanks to James Agnes and Manny Crisson and all the public servants for their hard work. And thanks to the former staff of the Wakefield and Spence electorate offices, to Matt Werfel, my office manager, who somehow managed to battle a rare form of asbestos-related cancer, a court case that went all the way to the High Court and victory, and a demanding boss. I can't thank you enough. And thanks also goes to Caleb Flight, Nympha Farrell, Rob Close, Alex Pados, Ruben Bala and Brad Templer. And I'm particularly proud to see a former staff member, Olivia Savas, become the member for Newland. I was always impressed by her tenacity and maturity. And in the last weeks of pre-poll, as I stood on the booth, I had not one but two constituents tell me they were voting for me because of Olivia's hard work on NDIS and Centrelink cases. Olivia's hard work was typical of the staff in my office. My final thanks must go to my closest advisors. Now, those of you who know me well will understand that I hate taking advice, that I'd rather charge into battle, sometimes with those opposite and sometimes with the Liberal Party. If I've matured or softened at all, if I'm any easier to deal with, any less pig-headed, If I've achieved any equilibrium at all, it's all down to Fiona. She was well trained in Whitehall, in Treasurer Foley's office, in Canberra, to provide sage advice. And most importantly, she's patient and forgiving. She's also something of a portrait artist. She paints Labor Prime Ministers in colour and the Liberal ones in black and white, a visual representation of our state of affairs and perhaps our strengths and weaknesses. It's been a mad journey since I convinced her to get engaged over a dinner and a half a bottle of rum one night and announce it on Facebook. But we haven't looked back, and we still have the other half of a bottle of rum to get through. And we've been blessed by our beautiful girl Louise, my other advisor. She's already a great negotiator, a clever advocate, and I'm glad she's here today so she can see it to be it, if she wants. But she might also just decide to be Spider-Man. And I want to thank my mum, Tina, my sister Simone, and Fiona's parents, Lynn and Alan, for all their help and support while I was away in Canberra. And for all those Labor candidates contesting the federal election, I'm thinking of you, particularly Matt Burnell in the great electorate of Spence. It is a true honour to serve in this place, to serve one's electors, and to attempt to serve future generations in our deliberations. Let us all leave the world better than we found it.